I spent about 3 years visiting the doctors. The first year, it was on a weekly basis, literally going to a checkup, getting my blood test done, them examining it, then the next week getting the results, them not knowing, and then getting more blood, and this went on and on and on. This went on for about 3 years. They had no idea what was wrong with me. The last straw was when the rheumatologist wanted to put me on steroids. The doctor told me that I was going to be taking steroids. I was so excited. I thought I was going to become muscular and I wasn't going to be a skinny boy anymore. So I go home, I open my laptop, and I also Google the steroids that I'd be taking. To my horror, I discover that these steroids would thin my bones. I'd be susceptible to diseases. I would gain weight, unhealthy weight, and potentially have a lump over my neck. I was shocked by this. That, for me, was my rock bottom. I was so tired going to the hospital week after week after week, having tests done on me, my blood being drawn, and the doctors coming back and still telling me that they had no idea what was going on with me. I was sick and tired of the doctors telling me to try this medication and that medication and this medication without really knowing what was wrong with me. I was exhausted, frustrated, and angry. So when the rheumatologist told me that I had to take steroids for something that they still didn't know what was wrong with me, I gave up. This was the last straw for me, no more. I remember saying to myself that I was definitely no longer going to participate in all these medical experiments. I felt so defeated. I remember feeling helpless. I remember feeling like I'd failed. I remember feeling like I was being ultimately punished for being a man that loved other men. After all, I grew up in a Christian family. I grew up in Zimbabwe, where the context was being gay is wrong. Being gay gets criminalized. And I still held on to that view then. So I felt that whatever was going on with me was a fit punishment for my sexual orientation. I gave up. When I gave up, I remember having this one-sided conversation with myself, saying that if I'm being punished by God, then I no longer deserve the opportunity to be free. I no longer deserve the opportunity to remain in Australia. I no longer deserve the opportunity to be on this adventure to discover creating a wonderful life for myself here in Australia. I was not worthy. I did not feel worthy. I had failed. I'd been given this opportunity and I felt I had abused it because of my relationship to myself, a man that had sex with other men. That's a person who never deserved this kind of opportunity. That's what I thought. That's how I was raised. That's the country I was raised in. I was completely defeated. And I felt completely, utterly alone. I remember saying to myself, I would now rather die than continue living like this. Continuously in pain, lying on my back throughout the day and throughout the night. This was no way to live life. I remember surrendering to my death. The entire time I was sick, I never accepted that I was gay. When people asked me if I was gay, I would tell them that I wasn't. When the doctors asked me, I would tell them that I was having sex with other men. But this did not mean I was gay. I always thought that when I found the right woman, all these uncomfortable feelings would disappear. That never happened. When I surrendered to my death, it's when I finally accepted that I am a gay man. Once I accepted that I was gay, I started getting better. This felt like a miracle. What would take me an hour to walk 50 meters, I could now do in 20 minutes. I started learning to walk again. Then I learned to jog, and then I ran. And forevermore, till today, I'm always grateful I can walk, jog, and run. It's a demonstration of my surrender to being a gay man. One of my oldest friends is Jess. I met her on my first day of university on the 3rd of March 2003. I loved Jess. In class, she would raise her hand up, ask very insightful questions. She was very smart. She looked independent and had everything under control. I remember I spotted her one day in the library and she was taking a book off the shelf. And I remember thinking to myself, what a beautiful woman, full of freedom, power, intellect. And I said to myself, that's a woman I could marry. During the time I was sick, my friend Jess came to visit me. It was her first time coming to my home, and I was really excited to have a friend come to visit me. I'd been really, really lonely during my illness. I remember that I was outside in the sun, lying on my back and on Panadine Fort because I was in continuous pain. She brought a chair outside from the dining room and came and put it down outside to join me. We started talking, and then there's a brief moment of silence, and she looks at me and she says, "Can I please tell you something that I haven't told many people?" And I look up at her and I say, "Of course, anything." She looks at me and says, "I am a lesbian." I look back at her and I'm so shocked. This beautiful woman, intelligent woman, free woman, is a lesbian. I never expected that. I'd never met a lesbian. I was shocked and I was quiet. I looked at her and I whispered, "I'm gay." After Jess came out to me and I told Jess I was gay, we became really close. I would go to her home over the weekends, spend the night over, and we would study. We would go out for lunch 3 times a week after university. All our breaks would have coffee together. I would be having a cup of tea, she would be having a cup of coffee. She became my best friend. I finally, for the first time, felt connected, understood, and known. We decided to make a pact. In the gay community, many people at that time were actually committing suicide. Many people were taking drugs. Many people were over drinking. Jess and I made a pact to not kill ourselves because of our sexual identity, to not take drugs to escape our reality. And also, we wanted to be the best gay role models we could potentially ever be. And we made that promise to each other, which we still hold to today. Inside of the pact Jess and I made, we decided that it was time for us to truly become authentic, and share our true selves with our community and the people we loved. That was bloody scary. Easy to say, very scary to do. In reality, that meant coming out to all our university friends. It meant coming out to Uncle Andrew and all my Christian friends. In reality, it meant coming out to my family in Zimbabwe. I did not know if I had the courage to do all of this. If you've never, ever come out to a person before, this is what it's like. Every single time you're about to come out, you never know whether they're going to spit at you. You never know if they're going to punch you. You never know if they're going to reject you. You never know if they're going to permanently leave you. Every single time you are, and I was, in fear, utter fear. I decided to come out to my university friends, all my university friends. I could no longer live my life pretending that I was not a gay man. So the game was to come out to all of them. It was really important that I talked to every single one of them personally because I did not want rumors about me. When I wanted to come out to one of my friends, Jeffrey, a white Australian man, I was completely terrified. I remember sending him a text message on my Nokia red phone and telling him that I wanted to meet up with him after university in a quiet spot so that we could have a conversation. I remember that by me sending that message, my heart was racing because I'd now started the ball rolling and there was no turning back. I had put my coming out into motion and I was going to be telling one of my friends, and I was terrified that he was going to reject me and stop being my friend. I sat down with Jeffrey and he asked me, "So, what do you want to tell me?" I was slightly tongue-tied at that point in time. And then I said to him, "I've got something really important to tell you, but I'm really scared that if I tell you this, you might choose to end our friendship." Then he looked at me and he says, "Okay, what do you want to tell me?" And I said, "Jeffrey, I am gay." He was like, "Okay." And I said to him, "I'm terrified that you won't accept me for being gay because you might think that our friendship over these several years has been fraudulent because I've not been honest and open to you about this. I'm also scared that you might think that I would start hitting on you because I'm gay and you're a man. So I'm scared that you're going to end our friendship." He looked at me, he smiled, and he said to me, "It's okay that you're gay. You're my friend, and I have nothing going on about that." I was relieved. I felt completely accepted and that I had maintained a friendship with Jeffrey. I came out to over 20 of my friends. Some of them were like, "Duh, we've always known you're gay. We were just waiting for you to come out to us." That was a huge relief. I can't believe that these friends loved me so much that they gave me the space to be on my own journey. That's extraordinary. For me, coming out to my straight man friends was the biggest challenge. For me, I was so scared that some serious harm would happen to me. When I came out to them, all of them accepted me. That was really confronting because I then had to rethink my point of view about sexuality. I was the one imposing the view that people in Australia were not going to accept me for my sexual orientation. They were not going to accept me for being gay. But so far, my friends accepted and loved me for who I was. For me, that was a miracle, and that was freeing. The next challenge in coming out was communicating that I'm a gay man to Uncle Andrew and our Christian friends. I was terrified. I thought I was going to get kicked out of the house. I thought I was going to become homeless. I thought that perhaps I might be sent back to Zimbabwe. I was scared. I remember coming out to Andrew, and I was so shocked. He was very loving, and he was completely fine with it. I also remember coming out to our other Christian friends, Janine, Sharon, and they just loved me exactly the way I was. I was so surprised that even within their faith, there was room for me. I felt free again. I had no choice but to go back to university the next semester, even though I was still sick. My visa stipulated that my visa was only valid while I was studying. So I had no choice but to go back to study. This was very difficult for me. I was still on Panadol Fort and had to take them every 4 hours. It was very hard for me to concentrate in class. Worse was that during this particular semester, I couldn't even work. I hadn't worked all summer, and I wasn't going to be able to work the whole semester. I could barely walk. I was on crutches for that semester. I had to study and become a lawyer. My ultimate dream was staying in Australia and living my life freely. This was not going to happen unless I got a job, and unless I got a job as a lawyer. So I had to work my butt off and find a way to do that. As I had not worked all summer and couldn't work while I was studying, when I was terribly ill, I literally ran out of money. I asked my brother to contribute. That was very difficult for him. He himself was a new migrant to the UK and setting up his life with his wife at that time. So he had to find a way as well to raise and contribute to my fees. I will never forget what my brother did for me. It's extraordinary. In addition to that, I kept on asking people in my community if they would be able to contribute to me. I remember the Chomley family. The Chomley family would donate $5,000 every year into my bank account, no questions asked. I was profoundly moved by this generosity. How does one thank a person who barely knows you, but just believes in you and your dream? I had no words. I still have no words. Some of my donors would contribute $2,000 a year, $500 a year, $20. Every cent made a difference. That's how I completed my university studies. The next obstacle was applying for summer clerkships. Law is all about being somebody. If you're not somebody, you are absolutely nothing. And that's why law school is highly competitive. One of the ways of being somebody was getting a summer clerkship. Having a summer clerkship was like having a 4 to 6 week internship in a law firm. These summer clerkships were highly competitive, and if you got one, it set you apart from the pack. You were deemed worthy, you were deemed smart, you were deemed to have a high chance of getting a law job. only 40% of people studying law would get a summer clerkship. That's how competitive they were. Some people would get 6 clerkships, some would get 1, and most did not get a clerkship. Getting a clerkship gave you the best opportunity of getting a job in a top-tier law firm. Without one, you were nothing. Some people had 4 to 6 clerkships, and some people did not have any. I had to get this clerkship, otherwise I would not have an opportunity. The problem was, to apply for a summer clerkship, you had to be an Australian permanent resident or an Australian citizen. Guess what? I was neither. I'm an international student from Zimbabwe. I couldn't even fill out the online forms because anytime I ticked the box where it said, are you an Australian permanent resident or an Australian citizen? The answer was no. And then it would move to the application cannot progress. I was stuck. Over the past couple of years, I'd been working at Maddox. I'd started off working in the mailroom, and then I moved into the document management department. Then I moved to debt collecting, and then I moved to doing research in the library, and then I moved to being a paralegal. So there were so many departments I worked in, and worked in the commercial department, construction department, property department, employment. So I got a taste of the different sectors and different areas of law, and I wanted it. I had to find a way to create a summer clerkship for myself. So what I did was that I set up a meeting with one of the HR ladies at Maddox. I was so nervous. She said yes to my request for a meeting, and I remember going into Maddox in the city, the CBD, entering into her office. I was so nervous because I was about to make a request that was outside the norm. We sat down, and I said to her that I'd really like to do a summer clerkship at Maddox, but I can't actually do the application because the online form doesn't allow me to complete it because I'm not an Australian permanent resident and I'm not an Australian citizen. She looked at me and said, well, I think it would be great for the firm for you to also do a summer clerkship because of all the time you've put in here. Then she said she was going to email me a paper form, then I could fill it out and then email it back to her. I was so grateful. I'd overcome another obstacle. I was so scared of asking people for what I really wanted because I always feared to be rejected. This was a small victory for me. Doing a summer clerkship was like doing a month interview. This was an opportunity for the partners of the firm, the senior lawyers of the firm, to determine whether they should give you a job after you finish law school. And the kind of job you got to begin with was a traineeship, where then you get work experience for a year and then you officially qualify as a lawyer. I wanted this traineeship. The stakes were high. When I finished my summer clerkship, I then went to the UK to tell my brother that I was gay. My older brother, Tendai. Tendai is now living and working in the United Kingdom. So I specifically go to the UK to tell my brother that I'm gay. I am terrified of coming out to my brother. Will my brother take his love away from me? Will I be abandoned? Am I bringing shame to my brother? And now he's going to have to live with the shame that his brother is gay. I did not really know whether I was doing the right thing. I would dream from time to time on how I'd have the conversation. And I could see myself having an easy flowing conversation. And then from time to time, I also dreamt about how horribly wrong it was all going to be. So I was in this conversation of should I, shouldn't I? I now remember being in the UK, and I was there for 3 weeks. 1 week goes by, I don't tell him. 2 weeks go by, I don't tell him. I'm in my 3rd week of my holiday, and soon I have to come back to Australia. Coming out to my brother was very messy. It did not go the way I wanted it to go. In actual fact, my brother caught me being with another man in his home. When my brother caught me with another man, I was terrified because now I couldn't control the situation, or what I thought was controlling the situation. I was ashamed. I was terrified. I'd brought another man into his home without telling him, so I felt I'd done something really bad as well. But what was a horny 20-something to do? Anyway, we sat down in the lounge, and I said to him, by the way, I'm gay. He looked at me, he sat down, he wasn't smiling, he wasn't frowning, and he said, I've always known. I was taken aback. In my mind, I was like, how could my brother know? We've both grown up in Zimbabwe. I've never had a conversation about being gay in our home. I've never had a conversation of being gay at school or in broader Zimbabwean society. All I know is that being gay is a criminal offense. So how could he know? Then my brother asks me, will you be telling mom and dad? And I say to him, yes, I will be telling mom and dad. He looks at me and he says, I don't think you should be telling mom and dad. In that moment, all I heard was white noise. In that moment, I felt that my brother was embarrassed by me because I'm gay, ashamed of me because I'm gay, and didn't love me because I was gay. And at the same time, I was also full of rage. I was like, don't you know the pain and suffering I've already gone through just to come out to you? That is how I felt. I felt shut down by my brother in that moment. And I said to him, I am going to tell mom and dad. This is my opportunity to be free. And he said, okay. My brother and I never talked about this for many, many years. While I was in the UK, I received an email from Sophie Gilbert communicating that there was going to be a cocktail party. And the cocktail party was for all the partners to mingle with the summer clerks to determine who they were going to offer traineeships with. I was so shocked to receive this email. I was on the other side of the world, and now my future was going to be in this one cocktail party. And I needed to find a way to get back to Melbourne fast. I had to do whatever I needed to do to get back to Melbourne. There were no flights from London to Melbourne. So I took a flight from London to Hong Kong because I knew that I'd be a little bit closer to Melbourne. And maybe I'd get a flight. Once I arrived in Hong Kong, I went up to the customer service people and I explained to them that I needed to be on a flight to Melbourne and I needed to be on a flight that night. They told me that there were no flights available. I looked at the lady and I pleaded with her. I told her I needed to get to Melbourne because I had to attend a meeting where they were going to determine my future, the rest of my life. She checked her system again. Again, there were no flights. I begged and begged. I did not leave the desk, and I just begged. She looked again, and again, and again, but there was nothing. She looked at me and told me that there was a seat on the next flight, but that seat had been decommissioned. The tray table for that seat had been broken, and so they had decommissioned that seat. I looked up at her and I said to her, "I'll take it." She looked up at me and smiled. We both had did it. She had partnered with me to get and go for this opportunity back in Melbourne. I was happy, she was happy. She looked up at me again and said, "Oh, and by the way, your seat is in first class." That was the only time I've ever been on first class. I arrived in Melbourne and I remember getting my suit ready, polishing my shoes. I was going to be impeccable for this cocktail party. I did arrive in time. I was so grateful. When I turned up at the cocktail party, I introduced myself to all the partners. They all knew me. I'd already been working there for over 5 years. Afterwards, the cocktail party finished. It only lasted about 45 minutes, but that's all the time I needed for this opportunity, my future. Now comes the waiting game. Am I going to get a traineeship at Maddox or not? I had not made any other applications. I couldn't make any other applications. No other firm was going to look at me. I was not an Australian permanent resident nor a citizen. All my hopes were in this opportunity to get a traineeship. The legal profession has a whole system of offering traineeships. There was a whole week where students get called up by the firm to offer the traineeship. Getting a call from the firm meant that you've been deemed worthy to come and work for the firm. It was a tense week at law school. Everybody was waiting for that opportunity. I wasn't the only one waiting. When the phone rang, people would rush out of class to take the call, to find out whether they'd got an opportunity. I remember when my phone rang, on the other end was Sophie Gilbert. And Sophie, in her chirpy voice, says, "Rugare, Maddox would be delighted to offer you a traineeship at the firm." My brain exploded. I couldn't believe it. This was happening to me. The black, gay, international student was being offered a job at Maddox. My entire life turned upside down in that moment. It was like all the dreams, all my dreams, all my parents' dreams, all the community's dreams from Zimbabwe were being realized. I received my contract from Maddox for my traineeship. I was so excited. I read every detail. In the contract, it mentioned that I could only take up the traineeship if I had the right to stay and remain and work in Australia. My student visa would not permit me to work in a law firm for a whole year. I had no working rights. There was one visa option for me to use once I finished my law school, and that was the occupational training visa. That was the only visa I could use. However, this visa was typically used by nurses who wanted to retrain or lawyers from overseas who were coming to Australia to get a different experience in the law here. It was seldom used for graduates who had finished law school. I felt completely stuck. I even spoke to the lawyers at Maddox, and they were uncertain whether this was going to work. Up to this point, I was always creating an opportunity for myself. This time, I couldn't create an opportunity. I didn't have the power to change government legislation. I was stuck. I had no idea what to do. We were going to apply for this visa, and it was going to be completely out of our hands. My future was uncertain. The next part of the story feels surreal. It feels like I'm lying to you. 6 months before I finished my law degree, the Australian government changed their immigration policy and introduced a new visa called the graduate visa, the 485 visa, which allowed all international students who had studied here for 2 years to apply for a visa with full work rights and full study rights for 18 months. And I was eligible. I was fully in possibility, and I was able to take on my traineeship at Maddox with my 485 visa in my passport. It feels like the universe conspired with me to give me what I wanted. I feel like one of the luckiest people on earth. Before I took up the opportunity to work at Maddox, they were the last people I needed to come out to. My family, my mom, my dad, and my sister. So when I finished all my studies 3 months before I started my new job, my friend Ryan and I went to South Africa. I took Ryan with me as my support person because I had no idea how my family was going to respond. Was I going to be beaten? Was I going to be kicked out? Was this going to be the last time I would ever see my family because I've shared with them that I'm gay? I had no idea. All I knew was that I needed to be authentic for myself and set myself free. Once again, just like with my brother, I leave it to last minute to tell my mom and my dad and my sister that I'm gay. I remember the day very well. I always suspected my mom knew I was gay. How could she not? After all, as a child, I loved playing with her nail polish. I loved doing her hair. And from time to time, I even would have a ribbon in my hair. So I felt safe telling my mom that I was gay. I remember sitting my mom on the couch and I telling her that I'd want to share my life in Australia. We sat down, both of us with our cup of tea. I look at my mom and I say, Mom, I don't think I'm ever going to get married. And she looks at me and says, oh, it's okay. You're still young. You've got plenty of time to find a wife. Then I look at her and say, no, Mom. I'm a man attracted to other men. I'm not going to get married to a woman. And then I say, but of course you know that. I'm gay. She looks at me and says, no, I have no idea. In that moment, my heart sank. My mom, whom I adore and love, had no idea I was gay. And in that moment, I felt alone. I had to explain to my mom that there was nothing wrong with me, that I did not have a mental illness, and that our friends in Australia, our Christian friends in Australia, knew I was gay and I was completely accepted. My mom then told me, she said, you have to understand, Rugari, I don't hate that you're gay and I don't love that you're gay. I know nothing about it. I realized that my mom had no awareness of what it was like to be gay and a homosexual. When my dad came home, he came and joined mom and I on the couch. And then mom told dad that I had something to share with him. I looked at dad and I told dad, Dad, I am gay. My dad looked at me and he said, you're still my son, I love you, you're still my son. I was shocked. That was not the reaction I expected from my dad. After all, my dad trained as a pastor. Then my dad said to me that he knew of other gay people and that they were lovely people. I was surprised. I had no idea that homosexuality was in my dad's consciousness. Then he asked me a question. He said, does that mean you like men in dresses? I laughed so loudly. And I looked at Dad and I said, no, Dad, I don't necessarily like men in dresses. And I said, other men may, but that's not what I like. He said, okay. Then the next day I had a conversation with my mom. My mom was wondering whether I had sufficient support in Australia and whether, because I'd gone to Australia, that's what made me gay. And I said to my mom, Mom, I want to be very clear with you. I was gay before I went to Australia. Going to Australia was an unconscious way of me escaping living in Zimbabwe because I always knew that there was something different about me. Saying this to my mom directly was very painful. It was the first time I've ever seen a tear in her eyes. My mom and I had further conversations. Me being gay was very difficult for my mom. And so she wanted to understand more about what was going on for me. She asked me whether I was HIV positive because of my illness. And I said to my mom, no, Mom, I'm not HIV positive. I said, if I were, I wouldn't be allowed to stay in Australia. You must note that Australia has a very rigorous immigration system where if you have a life-threatening disease, you're typically prohibited from migrating to Australia. I was around 24 years old when I came out to my mom and my dad. It was a very painful process. It was a very painful experience because I felt that my mom, whom I adored, no longer understood me and did not fully accept me. What I didn't know was that she herself had no idea how this was going to impact her life and the family, and she just had concerns for me. My dad just seemed to go with the flow with all of this. So my relationship with my dad improved after I came out, and my relationship with my mom felt more distance. I always knew my mom loved me, but it was just that I felt that she was still struggling to determine what went wrong that I became gay. My sister is around 13 years old when I came out to her. When I told my sister I was gay, she was not surprised. She actually reminded me of the time when I'd first visited her and the family, and she asked why I walked like Tyra Banks, and I'd evaded the question. So all this time, my sister always suspected that I was gay. For her, she had nothing going on, and she loves me exactly the way I am. Coming out to my mom and my dad and my sister was a full victory for me. I was finally free. It took many years for my mom to accept me for exactly who I was. It wasn't that she didn't love me. It wasn't that she was ashamed by me. But this is what she said. If I'm ignorant about it, her friends would be even more ignorant about it, and so would be the rest of the community. So for her, she really was coming from a place of concern because there was never a conversation about being gay in her community.